Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's 12 minutes past 12. You are listening to the Mid Morning Talk on Salam Media on this Tuesday, the 12th of July, 2022. Um, the discussion we are going to be having right now is around polygamy. Do we really understand polygamy, and how can one prepare themselves for it so that it flourishes? Polygamy is a hot topic, whether it's on social media, whether it's on some gatherings or so, but it is a hot topic nonetheless. Islam allows polygamy and permits men under specific circumstances to have at most four wives at any given time. Polygamy is not something new. It was customary before Islam and was not abrogated with the coming of Islam. Instead, Islam corrected and set various conditions for the practice. One of them limiting the number of wives to four. Do we really understand polygamy? And how can one prepare themselves for it? My panel of guests today is Zahra Ismail Suleiman, who's a humanitarian organization co-founder and a women empowerment activist who was recently honored at the University of KwaZulu-Natal's graduation ceremony for her achievement of a master's in social science, which she obtained following her research on the experiences of Muslim women in polygamous marriages in Durban and its surrounding areas, as well as Anisa Musa, the head social worker at Islamic Careline, also part of the Islamic Careline polygamy support group. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to both of you, and shukran for joining me.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
All right. Shukran for joining me to the both of you. Polygamy, as I mentioned, is a hot topic. And I'm going to start with you, Sister Zahra. What do we know about polygamy as a Muslim community?
Okay. Do you prefer me to be on speaker, or should I mute my speaker and go direct on the phone line?
Whatever's comfortable with you. I think this is fine.
Okay, for you it's fine. I'm more concerned about you.
Yes, no, this is fine.
So I think your question was, what do we know about polygamy as it is practiced in current times? Okay, so I think, like your introduction, polygamy we know is accepted Islamically. And in fact, it was practiced before, but Islam came and corrected the way that it was practiced. Now, that's the irony of the situation. Islam came to reform the practice. Yet, even in today's times, the way it is practiced is causing more harm to the wives, whether they first or second wives or subsequent wives, and even to the children of those polygamous marriages. So there's something wrong in the way it is practiced, and that is what we need to work on and reform, because Islamically we know it is a permitted practice.
All right. And Anisa, what are some of the conditions that Islam has placed on polygamy?
Okay, so Sister Miriam, I'm going to have to tell you that first of all, okay, so I'm more from a social perspective going to respond to that in terms of some of the, I wouldn't call them conditions, but perhaps some of the things to take into consideration. Maybe not Islamically, because that's not my, I'm not, that learned to be able to answer that question from an Islamic perspective. Would rather that be done by a scholar. But when we look at polygamous marriages, and rightly so, yes, it's the practice of polygamous marriages that's of great concern, not so much the fact that it is permissible by Islam. So when we look at some of the contributing factors, I think we need, and a lot of men need to understand that yes, while they do, it is allowed, it's the how, it's not just the what. So it's also the intention. Yes, it's a sunnah, but take into consideration your spouse, your current spouse, the woman that you're going to marry. You need to take into consideration your children, things like developmental stages, responsibilities, roles. Remember also that the current marriage that you're in, although yes, we know that you don't need your wife's permission, that you don't even need to tell her. But for me, as a counselor, as a therapist, what's important is that it reflects the kind of relationship that you have with your current wife. So if there's secrecy, if there's dishonesty, it says something about the level of trust and openness in that relationship. Also, it does mean that if your needs are not being fulfilled in your present relationship, you just go about adding another variable to it. It's like, like couples will say, okay, we're having problems in our marriage, we need to have a child. A child is not going to fix the relationship. Likewise, also another marriage is not going to fix your relationship. So if you're going to have two marriages and they're going to coexist, then steps need to be put into place or steps need to be taken to ensure that even your current wife is your roles and responsibilities fulfilled to her, that both marriages, if they're going, like I said, if they're going to coexist, that how are you going to sustain them in a healthy way? How are you going to communicate it to them? Are you going to set boundaries? How are you going to do that? So there has to be that openness. There has to be a sense of communication. And this requires the participation of all those that are concerned. It cannot be done in secrecy, dishonesty, in ways that are going to compromise and harm the people that are involved. And that's not Islamic. So even I may not respond from an Islamic point of view, but I know that we all know that Islam does not propagate injustice, unfairness, shunning away your responsibilities. You don't become half a parent. You may have two households and all of that. So those are just some of the things at the top of my head, just to respond to your question.
Mm-hmm. All right. You mentioned a very important word here, injustice. And in fact, justice is one of the conditions which Islam has placed on polygamy. But let me read this comment before we get into that quickly. It comes from Qari Ahmed Saeed, who says, women are not educated as far as polygamy is concerned. The key concern related to polygyny and marriage in general is that it must be practiced justly and fairly. It should not harm any of the wives involved, neither physically nor emotionally. Lately, there has been a lot of second marriages. Many Muslim males and females are calling us with regards to this issue, seeking talaq and fasq. Our Muslim women are not educated on this great sunnah. It does come with a lot of requirements. If a man wishes to take a second wife and we are aware that he may not be able to treat his wives justly, instead of telling him to abandon the practice altogether, he should be taught how to go about fulfilling the rights of this great sunnah. So the word here again, justice, which is one of the conditions. Now, how can we better understand justice in the context of polygamy? Because whenever the word is brought up, it's always about you have to treat the first wife as you treat the second wife or third or fourth, whatever. If you buy a house for this one, then you have to buy a house for that one, etc. That's how many people have looked at justice or just and fairness of between the wives. Let us take a quick break, and when we come back, we will dissect this a little bit. So please, ladies, give it some thought, and we will be right back.
Perform your Kurbani with Sanzaf in Africa, 750 Rand, and locally 1,980 Rand per share. Visit us at sanzaf.org.za or at one of our branches in Fortsburg, Lenasia, and Lodium. Call 011 834 6046 for more information regarding your Kurbani. Sanzaf, changing lives through development and relief.
For a long time, we've lived in a centralized world, where institutions held the all-important data and confirmed all transactions. Those times are over. Welcome to Libertas Group, a blockchain development company boasting an ecosystem that continually redefines the way we do business. Our blockchain is decentralized, making it immune to hacking or alteration, putting the power back in your hands with no middleman so you can focus on the growth of your business. Libertas, the simplest investment choice you'll make.
Kids these days are smart, and when you're competing for their attention against their smartphones, you need to make smart choices, like using Sunfoil triple refined pure sunflower oil in every meal you make. It's naturally cholesterol-free and approved by the Heart and Stroke Foundation as part of a balanced eating plan. So whether you're cooking, frying, or baking, you get the great tasting results that'll get their attention faster than the latest app. And if that doesn't work, change the Wi-Fi password. Sunfoil. Now we're cooking.
Breaking stereotypes, moving boundaries, joining hands. Salam Media. Humanity sets the agenda.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Mid-Morning Talk on Salam Media. It is 12:23, and we are talking about polygamy. Do we really understand it, and how can one prepare themselves for it? One of the conditions that has been set in polygamy is a justice. You have to treat the wives fair and justly. So let me go back to you rather, Sister Zohra. How can we better understand justice in the context of polygamy?
The
Sister
time
Zohra.
of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when he explained the concept of justice and fairness, remember there is the common story of the melon. And if he bought melon for one wife, he didn't buy for the other wife. In our understanding, that would be fairness and justice. What he did was he cut both the melons and gave half of each of those melons to each of his wives, right? So if one was sweeter, both wives were able to experience the sweetness of the melon. And if the other one was not as sweet or at the same taste, the both wives experienced that as well. So that is the concept of justice. Let's bring it now to contemporary times. So if we say that whatever the husband does for the one wife, he must do that for the other wife. So yes, that is in accommodation, financial resources, socio-economic resources. And then the one thing that we need to understand is depending on how many children there are on each side. So if there are more children, the one wife has more children and the other wife has fewer children, then obviously the amount of resources that are going to go to the wife that has more children will be more. To the point, the criteria should be that all the children in all the marriages, whether they 2, 3, or 4, there should be equal division of resources. So let's say, for example, the children are at school and each child needs a laptop and maybe all the other requirements to do well academically. Whatever he buys for the children on that side, he must buy for the children on this side. So it doesn't mean he bought 5 laptops here, he must go and buy 5 laptops there. There may be 3 children there. So justice is not in equal number. It is in the division of resources to the extent that everyone enjoys the same the gifts, or they are able to experience the same joy out of what they are going to use in whichever family they are and whichever wife there is. And the criterion is justice between the wives. So sometimes a wife might argue and say, but you gave more on that side. But then the counter argument is, but that wife has more children. On this side, there are fewer children. So again, it is not about that. As a father, the husband has a responsibility to all his children and to both the wives. Emotionally, that's where the big snag comes. even Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that in matters of the heart, he cannot be judged. I'm not sure exactly the wording of the hadith, but the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that he is fair in every respect, except that in matters of the heart, he cannot be held accountable.
You will never be able to maintain that emotional justice between your wives, no matter how keen you are. So, do not totally incline towards one leaving the other in suspense. And if you do what is right
Exactly.
and are
Absolutely.
mindful of Allah, surely Allah is all forgiving, most merciful. Anissa, earlier on you mentioned that polygamy is not done correctly. That means that people are somewhere, somehow not doing it the way it has been outlined in the Quran and the Sunnah. So, how is it supposed to be done?
I think, Sister Mariam, for me, it has to do with intention. So when the intention is clear, then the way you would also do it would be different. So if it's the right person and it's done out of respect, and like I mentioned earlier in some of the things that, when you take on a second wife, it's about being open, it's about being honest. It's not, even Islamically, a nikah should not be performed in secret. So that's for me again. There's lots of men, unfortunately, who have second or third wives. Their wives don't know anything about this, almost like a secret life. They find out after even years sometimes. Sometimes they have children with the other wife, and it's dishonest. Also, a second wife, some women are not aware that when they're in a relationship with a man, they don't know that he's married. Sometimes, so, for me, again, it's about the practice should be upstanding. It should, because it's a sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's an act of ibadah. It should be treated in that way. But instead, when I say it's not done correctly, that means that it's done with not the right intentions. It's not done as a form of ibadah. It's not practiced in a sunnah manner. It's done because he can, and it's seen as right. But the responsibility, remember that the responsibilities that go with the right needs to be fulfilled as well.
Yeah, I mean, we are seeing an increase of secret marriages. In fact, the messages on WhatsApp are proof enough to show that there are many people wanting to be in polygamous marriages, but without their first or second wives knowing. Another comment here. It is a condition of a sound marriage that it be announced and attested to publicly. A secret marriage, which is only witnessed by a few people in private, is disapproved at best and unlawful, according to some scholars. It is potentially harmful to those affected by it, as it almost always involves deception or at least gross omission, especially if a man marries an additional wife in secret and without her consent. Another word there coming up in that comment is consent. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more. Like, does the first or the second or the third wife need to give consent to the husband? Does she need to give him the permission to marry other wives? Or is it that he should just show her some respect by telling her that he intends to marry a second wife or a third wife or a fourth? Does he have to give her? I mean, does she have to give him permission? Let's continue with you, Anissa, and then I'll get your opinion, Sister Zahra.
Okay. No. Okay. So the wife, he does not require the wife's permission or consent to marry another woman. But like I mentioned earlier, also, when we talk about healthy relationships, openness, honesty, communication, you also mentioned a few things about the sanctity of nikah, and that an announcement should be made, and things that are done in secret. Usually, there's deception. So that again goes against basic Islamic principles. We don't even need to go into the details and the intricacies and the complexities of Islamic law per se, but just the foundation of Islam is not based on any kind of deception. So that on the one end, but like I mentioned also earlier, as a therapist, we know that a relationship, a marriage should be based on honesty and trust. When a marriage is a second or third or fourth marriage is undertaken without your existing wives knowing, that for me again is a breakdown in trust. There's, like you said, there's deception, and it says a lot about the health or the well-being of that existing marriage, and the damage, not just in terms of the current marriage and way it was, but how do you build, how do you sustain that marriage thereafter when your spouse has done something that you know nothing about? Remember that marriage is one of the most intimate relationships that there are. And when you marry to someone, then all of a sudden find out that they're sharing that same relationship with somebody else and you knew nothing about emotionally, that sets a woman back and a relationship back as well. And trust is one of the very difficult things to rebuild. So the damage that's done from that onset. So from an emotional point of view, and even in terms of the nature of the relationship, and then as well from an Islamic point of view, the fact that there's deception in itself makes the fact that if a man marries a woman without his wife knowing, that just does more damage than anything.
Sister Zahra, your thoughts on this?
Okay, so what Sister Anisa has said is 100%, because in my findings of my thesis, it was about the trust and the relationship being ruptured. Yes, we do know that the husband does not need to get the consent from the wife, but at the same time, if he's not planning to talaq his first wife, which means that after he makes the second or subsequent nikah, he still intends living a good, normal, healthy, emotional life with his first wife and family. And if, even although he doesn't require her consent, but I think he can inform her. He should. My personal recommendation would be that there should be some subsequent marital counseling for both the subsequent spouse and for the first wife and family. There should be discussion over it. There should be discussions about how life is going to change. If he is going to be setting those boundaries, how is he going to be dividing his time? And the first family may not be happy about it, but if the husband has a valid reason to make a second nikah, and it doesn't always have to be because the first wife is infertile or she is ill and she is unable to now fulfill his conjugal needs or other needs. Even if a husband has an insatiable sexual appetite and he is unable to satisfy that in the first marriage, he is permitted to take on a subsequent wife. But I believe, like Sister Anisa said, that consultation, honesty, trust, all of that is so important because, like I said, there's no talaq happening in the first marriage. There's still the intention of continuing the first marriage. So we shouldn't allow for there to be a rupture in the relationship of the first marriage. If there's that secrecy and the breach of trust, then it's really going to cause a breakdown in the first marriage. Lots of hurt, lots of emotional hurt caused there. The children feel very deceived. There's a lot of, Anisa also mentioned that depending what developmental stages the children are at in their lives, those stages could be arrested and it could give rise to problems. Psychological problems, psychological disorders in the children, in the wife. So although, again, Islamically, there is no requirement for the consent of the first wife, but if you want a healthy marriage and an open and trusting relationship on both sides, then it's very important to discuss and tell your wife that this is what your intentions are, this is why you are doing it. You do not want to commit zina, you do not want to commit a sin, and that is why you're doing it for the purity of Islam and for the moral purity of society and for all those good reasons, even if she may not be happy from a personal perspective, but eventually because she's a good Muslim she understands the rules of Islam. And if she doesn't, then I would say they should go, both husband and wife should go to a scholar and learn about how polygyny should be practiced according to the way of Sunnah. And when both then understand, then the man should go ahead with his subsequent nikah. And 100%, it must be done in openness with the whole community, with an announcement being done with the whole community, and everybody knows, because in my findings, most of the women found out much, much later in their marriage that their marriages had turned into polygamous. And you can only imagine what a shocking blow that comes like to the women and to the children. And how much of work has to be done from there in terms of the first marriage? It's almost like they're reworking the relationship of trust and honesty, and because it's like a betrayal. So now you're going to work as you with a couple where there's been a betrayal. And it has been like a betrayal, because what these men do, and again, this is from the findings of my thesis, where they have these secret relationships, they have these affairs with the women, and then eventually when they decide, okay, we want to make this halal, which is a noble intention and an act, then they do it, but the wife knows nothing about it. There are cases where there have been funerals of the husband, and people have come to the funeral, and only at that time it has been revealed to the wife, to the first wife and family, that the people who were sitting there were actually the husband's second wife and his second family. I mean, those are very, think about it. The wife is now undergoing grief. Now she's got to deal with a kind of a betrayal and unfaithfulness in the marriage, which she never knew about all this time. The way men break this news to their women is very un-Islamic. I've got cases which are not in my thesis, but it was during the time that I was interviewing my subjects. There have been men who have revealed that they are in a second nikah, like 6 months down the marriage, in the middle of the night, while the two of them are having an intimate relationship.
Wow. Oh, that is hectic.
You can only imagine what a shocking blow that must be. And I'm not talking out of I'm not sucking this out of my thumb. These are real stories. This is the lived reality of women. They don't inform them. When the wife wants to know because she needs closure, the wife is asking the husband, but when did this happen? You carried on staying with me. There was no change. I didn't notice any change. When did this happen? And he says, it's none of your business. And I mean, just based on what Sister Anisa explained earlier, that is not in keeping with a healthy marriage relationship. The father is the Amir of the family. The mother is the Amir of the house. But together they should be consulting with each other. There should be communication amongst each other. And that is what breeds healthy relationships, not secrecy and breach of trust.
And it comes back to the injustice of how polygamy or polygyny is practiced. And, in the Quran, in Surah An-Nisa, Allah does say that if you fear that you cannot do justice, then one only. One only.
Yes,
The
exactly.
key word that is
prevent you from sin. To prevent you from sin. Now, who is talking to you in the Quran? Isn't that Allah talking to you directly? And if you are treating that so lightly, then how can you expect Think about it. If you had in the law of the country, if you had to go and steal or you had to go and murder somebody, there's a consequence, right? There's a penalty for that. You will pay a fine or you will go to prison for a period of time or a life sentence. Allah is saying, do this in this and this and this prescribed way. If you cannot, it is better for you to prevent you from committing sin. So Allah is telling you directly that there's a consequence for your behavior here. And if you are not going to practice it, then there's a penalty you're going to have to pay. And we know that the penalty from Allah is worse than the penalty on earth. Mm-hmm. And in this case, the one of my subjects where she said she asked her husband, so how come I didn't know? Because there were no changes. You come home every day, you sleep with me in my bed every night, and now I come to know 6 months ago you made nikah to somebody else. Now, doesn't that mean that the same husband was made injustice to the subsequent wife? Mm-hmm. Because he didn't give her fair time, and you don't know what else.
Exactly. And this breeds resentment. Yeah, this breeds resentment between the two wives because it seems like one wife doesn't know what's happening because she feels like the husband is probably being controlled by the other wife, etc. But both of them, or the first wife, doesn't even know what is happening.
And that's because of assumptions. And I always say that in a polygamous marriage, okay, we are not polygamous, right? Polygamy actually means where a husband or a wife can have multiple spouses. But in Islam, it's only the husband who can have more than one wife up to a max of 4. So we call it polygyny, right? So in a polygynous marriage, when a husband is, you mentioned that, what was your point you just mentioned? I just lost my train of thought. You said, what did you just say a little while ago? Sister Mariam, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. It's just been having a little bit of technical difficulties.
Oh, sorry. You mentioned that it breeds resentment. So one of the other findings in my thesis was that because of the breach in trust and the secrecy of the marriage, the women became emotionally distant from their husbands. Because to rebuild that trusting relationship is very difficult. It takes time. It takes change in the husband's behavior for them to be confident that, you know what, now I can start trusting my husband again. Usually there's a lot of lies and deception associated with polygamous marriages. So the woman said, we are physically married, but emotionally divorced or separated. Because it broke them so much that there was that distance created. Some of them used the word, there's a wall between us. So, emotionally, they had no feelings for their husband. So that's what I'm saying. As you said, it breeds a lot of resentment. And that is not what Islam dictates families to be. Families by themselves are the foundation of society.
All right, Sister Zohra, we're going to take a quick break and we will wrap up when we return. Please stay with us, as well as Sister Anisa.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
Hunger ratios in South Africa are on an upward trajectory since the beginning of COVID-19. Over 23% of South African households experienced hunger last summer. At SANZAF, we aim to ease the hunger struggles of those in need by providing freshly prepared meals daily. You can be part of this by donating towards the SANZAF Meals Project. Visit sanzaf.org.za or call us on 011 834 6046. SANZAF, changing lives through development and relief.
Discover the Africa of your dreams and surround yourself with her spectacular beauty. Relax beneath her serene sunsets and explore wildlife at its natural best. It's where the pride of Africa comes together. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve. Get to know the Big Five or cruise on an elephant safari game drive. Interact with lion and tiger cubs. Enjoy cuisine while we pamper you during your 5-star stay. Indulge in the true African experience. 31400 or visit kwantu.co.za. The Kwantu Private Game
I can
Reserve.
hear,
The place
but it seems like
gather.
it must be the
Operation
cable.
Kurbani, Maulana Timol would like to inform all those that have entrusted our team with their Kurbani. Alhamdulillah, your sacrifice has been performed. May Allah accept it.
Love is behind all the greatest stories of our lives. And the greatest love of all is Allah's.
2 minutes, Mola. 2 minutes.
10 days
Just
of
make it a
Dhul-Hijjah,
comment.
the days most loved by Allah.
Just
So
make
give
it a comment.
Qurbani in 30 countries worldwide. Give Qurbani. Give love with Islamic Relief.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
It's 12:48. Welcome back. You're listening to the Mid-Morning Talk on Salam Media. And today we are having a discussion around polygamy or polygyny, a topic that it does get spoken of, but it is not done correctly, even though it's spoken of. You know, there are many heated discussions on social media, etc. But something needs to be done about the way it is done. The injustices that are carried out during polygamous marriages is just it's not on. Brothers, my dear brothers, we need to be, I mean, y'all need to be, not we. My dear brothers, y'all need to do better than this in Islam, because if you fear that you cannot be just, then only one wife, only one. All right, and with me is Sister Zahra Suleiman, humanitarian organization co-founder and also women empowerment activist who did a study on polygamy and how it's practiced in KZN and surrounding areas, as well as Anisa Musa from Islamic Care Line. Now, final thoughts, ladies, before we wrap up. Let me start with you, Sister Anisa.
Jazakallah for the opportunity, Sister Miriam. So I've made a few points, right? And
Yes.
my observations as a social worker at the Islamic Care Line for a very, very long time, and watching how marriages have evolved and how polygamous marriages have come into play over the years, and how the prevalence have increased in the dynamics. So, you know, the emotional implications for a woman are so vast. We can have a separate topic on it. And it obviously leans into the kind of marriages that transpire as a result. And obviously, marital breakdown is often a result of polygamous marriages because it's not carried out in the right way. And we've spoken about the correct way, and we've spoken about, you know, the justice versus the injustice. But just a few words that come to mind in closing, right? So the one is, for me, and I mentioned this earlier, it has to be the intention. Right? So intention is extremely important when a man takes on a second wife, right? Whether it's to fulfill his needs, whether because if he's unhappy, but again, it's not the what, it's the how. And to take responsibility for your rights. So you are, as a husband, a man is responsible for the well-being of his wife and his children. And that doesn't end at any point, doesn't take a break at any end. So those responsibilities need to be fulfilled, and he has to look out for the interests of all those that are concerned. And then obviously, you know, when there's deception, there's playing the basic principle of respect. If I'm not going to tell my husband I'm doing something, also if we talk about marriages, we talk about decisions, everything we do it together. So, I mean, such a big thing where there's non-disclosure is obviously, again, such a breach of that basic value of respect in a relationship. And then what I would also like to say is often husbands do not fully understand the emotional implications for a woman. And so women find themselves wondering, what did I do wrong? Am I not good enough? They need to understand why. So I would say that men need to support their wives through the adjustment process. And sisters, I mentioned quite earlier in the program about having joint sessions. We can mediate processes where boundaries are shared. The little details, they may seem insignificant, like holidays, times, routines, roles in the home. Those things may seem insignificant, but they become, like even dating functions, in-law relationships, all of those. And my message to men out there is, yes, you do have a right to take more than one wife, but make sure that you fulfill your responsibilities and take into consideration all the variables, because it's a big decision and it's a big responsibility. Allah has not made it easy because it's such a big responsibility. You have double of everything, or triple of everything, finances, responsibilities. So take that into account and fulfill your responsibilities in the best way. It's not something to take lightly. Support the people in your life to adjust through it so that it can become as easy as possible for all those concerned.
All right. I have Maulana Lukman on the line who would like to share his perspective on this. Assalamu alaikum, Maulana.
Walaikum salam. How are you, Sister Mariam?
Alhamdulillah, all good. And yourself, Maulana?
Alhamdulillah, very well.
Maulana, polygamy is a topic that is always heated. Some can stand it, and many cannot stand it. What are your thoughts on this? As coming from a Maulana, coming from a male perspective.
I feel like you're putting me in a trap coming from a man's perspective. Of course, a man is going to agree that polygamy is fine. But here's the thing.
Not all of them, though.
Yeah, of course. Men have different reasons why they would want to add on to the family. They would want to add on to their number of children and their domestic situation. Men have different reasons. But the fact is that Islam does allow it. It's not haram. I always find in years back, it was almost as if people would speak with in revered tones about somebody that has a second or third wife. They're like, do you know who's going to say? You would like it's a bad, dirty secret. It's not. It's the solution to infidelity. It's the solution to zina in some way. But here's the thing as well. It's a very, very sensitive issue, and it's not for everybody. That much I have to admit. It's not for everybody. It doesn't mean that if Islam says, because Allah in the Quran says that, he talks about 2, 3, 4, and ends there. It doesn't mean that now it is compulsory and everybody must do it. It's not for everybody. And I just think that, there's a level of emotional intelligence that's required. Most men go about it, like a bull in a china shop. That's a sure way to fail, and you don't go in it very, very aggressively. It's a highly sensitive matter because women, by their very nature, they're nurturing. They're worried about the future of their children, the future of their family. When a woman gets married, she looks into whether or not this man is going to be a good provider, is going to be a good husband, a good father. And when there's a woman that's added to that, most women believe that their situation has been jeopardized, has been threatened. So then they eventually act in a way, that women would react. And I think for that reason alone, conversations need to be held prior to the event. Families need to be consulted. The elderly need to be also consulted. These are not compulsory, but these are just ways in which the issue of polygamy can be brought up in a sensitive way. And when it is done, eventually it is done in a way that is not going to feel, the first wife is not going to feel that she's been thrown away or something like that. And I think that's where men get it wrong. that want to go into polygamy. They just go into it, go hung, full of enthusiasm, and they believe because they have the Quran with them and backing them, nothing can go wrong. A lot can go wrong. So if you're not prepared for all the delicate negotiations and the, trying to have everybody, because it's not just your wife that's going to be impacted, your children will be impacted, your wife's family are going to be impacted, your future in-laws are going to be impacted, your future wife, does she have the emotional maturity to be a second wife or a third wife? That's also important. So, like I said, yes, it's on the surface, it's a very good practice, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's completely sanctioned in Islam. But I just think people need to be a lot more sensitive, a lot more circumspect about how their spouse is feeling. And if their spouse is not, agreeable, she probably has very strong reasons. And if you go ahead, you might find yourself with one wife. You know what I'm saying? Instead of two, or the one would have left. So I think it's really about being very sensitive. It's really about being in tune with the needs and the emotions of the people that are going to be affected directly by it.
All right, Jazakallah for your comment. Let me quickly go back to Sister Zahra for your final thoughts in 1 minute.
Okay, so what Sister Anisa, outlined and explained in detail that those are the factors. She spoke about the division of time, the boundaries, the outings, the holidays, the relationship with in-laws, and everything that she outlined over there. Those are all important factors, because after that becomes your everyday life. And you don't want to have bickering in your marriage every day. So if you set the rules, a lot of the women in my thesis said that, in my study, said that the husbands made their own rules and followed their own rules. And they may have not known exactly how to practice polygyny, women, but they knew about justice and fairness. And that was the one thing that the husbands were greatly defaulting on. So agreed with what Anisa says, and also with what Maulana Luqman has said. And but the one thing that I want to pick up on is intention. If you do anything with the right intention, Allah's help and guidance will always be there. So the husband must not be deceitful in his intentions. He must, talk to the wife, respect the first wife. She may not be in agreement. And I suggest that this kind of meeting and discussion should happen with some senior person or a counselor or a therapist in the safe space of that kind of a situation where there will be mediation. And because usually there's a lot of emotions that are going to be running higher. I think if it's done in a therapeutic space or a space with a learned scholar, a lot of those finer details can be discussed amicably, and some decent agreement can be reached at the end. And I think also that, like we talk about currently, the story about LGBTQ plus is quite rife on social media and in our community circles, which means people are finding this to become a social problem. Likewise, the correct or rather incorrect practice of polygyny is also a social problem. So we can't shy away from these issues. We need to deal with them head on and find an appropriate way of how to work around it and to resolve it.
Very true. Shukran so much for your time, Sister Zahra Suleiman, and to Sister Anisa Musa, as well as Maulana Luqman. And very importantly, we have to keep on having these discussions. We have to understand it better, and also get the families involved. I mean, because when you marry a person, you're not just marrying the person alone. You are marrying a family. You are including everybody else, and it becomes part of the community now, the greater community as well. And if it can be done right, perhaps people can see polygamy for the good that it has, the benefits that there is in a polygyny. But we're going to leave it there for now because time is not on our side. Shukran so much for your time, Sister Zahra, and for joining us on this discussion. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Shukran, Ameen. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
All right, it is 1 minute past 1. You are listening to the Mid Morning Talk on Salam Media, and that brings us to the end of today's broadcast. I will be back tomorrow, same time, same place, 11 to 1 p.m. right here on Salam Media. Please, we would love to hear from you. Share your comments, questions, queries, or suggestions in our comment section, or send them to us on WhatsApp. The number is 061 7660355. Until tomorrow, fi amanillah. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.